Truly capturing a canon character is what so many fanfic writers strive for, and yet it is one of our greatest struggles. No matter what they do or say on your page, they always feel wrong, but that doesn't have to be your reality any longer. I'm going to give you the simple solution that will make your characters feel like they walked straight from canon and into your story. If you've watched my last video, then you know the 6 biggest causes for out of character, also known as OOC writing. But avoiding the pitfalls is only half the battle. How do you actually understand someone else's characters? How do you make them feel just like their canon counterparts in your fanfiction? And how do you motivate them to do something they would never do in canon, yet still convince the reader? Keep watching and you'll know the answer to these questions and more. Chapter 1. The components of canon characters. Being told that your characters feel true to canon is one of the highest compliments you can receive in the fanfiction space. So if you want readers to feel as though you truly get a character, you might think it's a matter of perfectly replicating their personality and mannerisms. Not really. You need to go deeper. You must not only understand why they think or act that way in canon, but why the original creators wrote them that way in the first place. And that comes with understanding the following. Page 1, role in the story. Are they the protagonist, deuteragonist, or antagonist? Do they exist to support, challenge, or act as a foil to another character? This is one of those things that is most likely to change between canon and your story. But if you understand what storytelling purpose a character was created for in canon, you can then consider how you might tailor them for whatever role they play in your fanfiction. In The Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen's role in the story isn't just the protagonist, but the spark that ignites a story about the people of Panem rising up to topple their fascist government. Suzanne Collins created Katniss for that narrative purpose, and that's why she's written to be the type of person who would volunteer to do something as inspiring as take her younger sister's place in the deadly Hunger Games. So if you wanted to write a fanfiction where Primrose Everdeen participates in the Hunger Games instead, but you want to keep Katniss in character, you would need to have something other than a fear of the games prevent Katniss from volunteering. It could be that on her hunting trip, she gets a head injury that prevents her from realizing that her sister was Reet. It could be that when Katniss tries to volunteer, Gale rushes in to restrain her. Page 2. Role in the world. This is the canon character's occupation, relationships, and contributions to society. Are they a grand monarch or a humble tailor? Are they a parent, a younger sibling, or a pet? Are they the class clown or the introvert staring out the window? Oftentimes, we create characters because there is a role in our world that someone has to fulfill, and in turn, their place in the world will inevitably affect their characterization. Ganondorf from the Legend of Zelda series is the king of the desert-dwelling Gerudo tribe, and the only male Gerudo born in that century. No matter how much fic writers change or reframe his goals or motivations, this is the part of his character that they're most likely to keep consistent, since his position in the world puts him in proximity to a lot of tension, drama, and cool world building. Page 3. Backstory. Where does the character come from? How were they raised? What are their core memories? This is everything the character went through before the events of canon or your fanfiction. If you're writing a canon-compliant or canon-divergent story, then depending on where you're at in the timeline, canon is the backstory. Backstory is the origin of every belief a character has about themselves and the world around them. Every insecurity or point of pride they have will come back to their past experiences. It's also where they learned a lot of their behavior and mannerisms and why they might choose to break away from them. We know that Toph Beifong is well versed in high society manners, but we also know how much that stifled her growing up. Understanding her backstory is integral to representing her sloppy eating habits while still remembering that she knows more table manners than the rest of the gang put together. Page 4. Goal and motivation. This is what the character wants and why they want it. Are they after love, revenge, liberation, approval? If so, why? Motivation will almost always have its roots in backstory and the events of canon, but depending on what your fanfiction is about, it is also subject to change. Knowing a character's goal and motivation is key to understanding why they make the choices they do. If someone's top priority is keeping their children safe, they're not going to bring dangerous and unpredictable artifacts into their family home, not unless they take precautions and have no other options. But it isn't enough to understand why a character wants what they want and why they want it. You need to know what's preventing them from getting it too. It could be another character's pursuit of their own goal. It could be a monster or a mountain. Or it could be your character's very own flaws. Chances are that the original creators of canon gave the character a goal that is at odds with who they are. And as a result, the character must either change to achieve that goal or change the goal itself. You know what that's called? Character development. During the events of a story, a character who was forged by their backstory is further changed by their pursuit of a goal. Once you understand those 4 components, then you understand why the original creators made them to think what they think, say what they say, and do what they do. You can then draw from that to write them accurately and authentically in your own works. But you might run into a problem where canon doesn't provide all these components for you. What now? Well, that's the most fun part, and there is a damn good chance that this is what compels you to write fanfiction about your favorite characters in the first place. Chapter 2. The Blank Spaces. I have good news. The less fleshed out a character is in canon, the more room you have to invent their personality, and the harder it is to write them out of character by mistake. Writing fanfiction isn't just about depicting a character accurately, but expanding on their characterization. Did canon not give your favorite side character a backstory? You can make one up. Does their motivation or goal remain a mystery? Well, now you get to make the case for your fan theory. Because I cannot stop using Legend of Zelda characters as examples, Nintendo conceived of Link as a blank slate for the player to project themselves onto. But to fanfic writers like me, he's free real estate. In Twilight Princess, he does have a little more characterization than usual. We know his role in the world is a ranch hand and then a chosen hero, and we know his role in the story is the fish out of water protagonist the player can relate to. We know his motivation is to save his kidnapped friends and then to help his companion Midna, and we know his goal is to fulfill his chosen hero destiny to save Hyrule. We don't know his backstory, aside from the fact that he lives alone and seems to have no parents. And oh boy, do we fic writers love to pounce on that blank space. Some writers say his parents were murdered. I killed them off with a plague, and each version often has Link handle that grief differently, which can lead to some very different characterizations that all still feel authentic. That brings us to Chapter 3. There are multiple correct interpretations. While some interpretations may fly in the face of everything canon has ever said about a character, there's no such thing as a single correct interpretation. As we all know, Art is subjective, and we often focus on different details or project our own unique experiences. As long as our interpretation is based on what is present in the text, it doesn't matter if the way we headcanon a character is different from someone else's. Midna from Twilight Princess, my favourite character ever, my Blorbo to end all Blorbos, is a member of a fictional race called the Twilight, but she has also been confirmed in Hyrule Historia to be Middle Eastern coded. In canon, we know she's very proud of her appearance, so when I envision her in a modern AU, I think she would feel most confident in clothing that shows off her figure. Other fans have interpreted modern AU Midna as a hijabi. For Muslim women in the Middle East who have the freedom to choose, they'll wear hijabs for lots of different reasons, but one of them is to respect their own bodies. So that also feels true to a modern AU version of Midna. Outside of writing fanfiction, this is a healthy mindset to have when engaging with fandom in general. At best, it opens you up to some really cool interpretations that you might not have considered before. At worst, it helps you bite your tongue and move on, or engage in fandom discourse with good faith and respect. Chapter 4. Marrying canon characters with your desired plot. When trying to write in character, the question you should be asking yourself isn't, would they do this? But instead, what would it take for them to do this? As humans, we are all capable of good and bad actions. Even the most mild-mannered, kind-hearted, and forgiving character in the world could throw a punch if you push them to the brink. To figure this out, you need to ask yourself, what is this character's sorest spot? What are their greatest fears? What can they not afford to lose? From there, you can engineer scenarios that push these particular buttons. If you want sweet, kind character A, someone who values friendship above all else, to brutally murder character B, what would it take for them to do so? It could take character B backing them into a corner. It could take A having a dark secret and B threatening to reveal it to the friends A depends on like a life source. It could take a frying pan being within reach at just the wrong time. I've only gotten halfway through Fallout Equestria, but I think it's a shining example of this what would it take principle. How do you get the sweet and virtuous main six from a kids show to cause a devastating nuclear apocalypse? Read Fallout Equestria and you will know. Chapter 5. Alternate Universes. Remember how we discussed the components of canon characters back in Chapter 1 of this video? Well, plonking those same characters into an AU often means you end up wiping those slates clean. They don't have the same backstory, goals, motivations, or roles when you remove them from that canon story or world. What do you do then? Well, you should still work through those components because when you understand why your characters are the way they are in canon, you can then work backwards and figure out why they are the way they are in your AU. In canon-compliant or canon-divergent works, you start with the background, motivation, and goal of a character and end with the mannerisms and personality. In an AU, you start with the mannerisms and personality and work backwards to their goal, motivation, and background. What could you give them in this universe that would result in a characterization that resembles their canon personality? To use my own work as an example, I needed to have a reason why Midna from Twilight Princess would have her canon, abrasive personality in my high school AU, as well as a similar character arc. In this AU, she's not a princess, she doesn't get usurped, she doesn't get cursed into an imp form, and she doesn't have a prejudice against the Light Dwellers of Hyrule. Without these things, how can I give her a character arc about warming up to a Light Dweller like Link and reclaiming her power? Well, I can give her abusive parents to escape from, I can give her and Link some tense history, and I can make her run for student council president against his sister. It's a very different scenario from Canon, but it's one where we get to see her act like her Canon self and go through similar growth. You may still end up with a result that's different from the canon characterization, but readers are more willing to accept a close enough in alternate universes. They'd rather have a character who is well written and consistent within the fanfic itself, rather than a true to canon character who feels ham-fisted into the setting. We covered a lot of good stuff in this video, but if you're anything like me, nothing drives the point home better than a worksheet. Fellow fic writers, allow me to present Break Down Your Blorbo, a step-by-step guide to writing in character. This thing is comprehensive, and you can apply it to any character you like, no matter how fleshed out they are in canon. If you join my Patreon, then this worksheet is all yours. But what if you don't just want to tweak a canon characterization, but break it completely? What if your story won't work unless the canon character is remarkably different from their canon self? Next video, I'll be covering some legitimate reasons why someone might choose to write OOC, because as we all know, being accurate to canon is not the be-all and end-all of good fanfiction. If you cannot wait for part 3 of this trilogy, then guess what? It's already available on my Patreon right now. And don't forget about that worksheet on offer. Do you have any tips and tricks of your own about writing true to character? Or any questions you'd like answered? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And that's the end of the video. Kudos for watching, kudos for liking, and extra kudos if you've subscribed and hit the bell for more dreamy fanfiction tips. I will see you in my next video, but in the meantime, happy fic writing! Thank you so much to my wonderful Patreons for supporting the videos we all love, especially Dandelions and Chestnuts and Ashbury, who also has a fanfic writing advice channel of her own worth checking out. Mega kudos to you both, and kudos to all who support the channel, no matter what form that support takes.